they're kind of bringing back an older brand of football that we haven't seen for a while that seemed to be becoming archaic. And that's the fact that they are willing to just run the football and run it down people's throat. They have a good offensive line. And look, it's beat up right now, and yet they were still very effective on Sunday. So you have to think once they get McGlinchey back and Staley back, they're just going to get that much better. But when you saw what the Niners have done, we saw the Colts go into Kansas City a couple weeks ago. They ran it down Kansas City's throat. Texans kind of implemented the same game plan where they ran Carlos Hyde a lot in that game, really controlled the game. So is running the ball, is teams going to start going back to that as a counter to these high-powered, high-passing offenses, and the fact that, okay, we don't have a Mahomes, but we do have a good defense that can at least keep them in check, and we can control the ball and keep them off the field. Do you feel like that's going to be sort of the counter?
I think it's a trend that we have to watch because the passing game can only be like that for a handful of teams. There's only one Patrick Mahomes in the world, and we even talk about the fact that with 32 teams, sometimes it's hard to get 32 good starting quarterbacks in the NFL. It's amazing to me how you can't find 32 young men who can lead football teams. That's pretty crazy. So when you look at Patrick Mahomes or maybe a Lamar Jackson with his dual threat or a Deshaun Watson, certainly, you're starting to see where other teams aren't always going to have that. And yeah, I think it might be, especially with the running back by committee, right? I mean, yes, the Niners are second in the league in rushing offense, but they're also doing that by committee. They've got Breda. They've got now Coleman is back. They didn't even have McKinnon really for much of anything because he's injured again or still nursing that injury. But then they throw Mostert in there and he's given them a little bit of a third down scat back. He can take the pass out of the screen. He's a shifty guy. I mean, so they've got pieces there in the backfield where they're not just one dimensional. I think that's been building for a while. We've seen it in fantasy where it's really hard to draft a running back. Not only do you have to draft a guy who's going to get bell cow work to get good fantasy points, but you're going to have guys getting injured a lot. So these teams are starting to build this double and triple threat mentality, rushing the ball, holding the ball. Time of possession is key because when you do go up against a guy like Mahomes or Watson or whatever, they tire your defenses out really, really quickly because they are all over the field. Your defense just gets gassed. And so I think time of possession and this rushing attack, you might be onto something there that, okay, this is a counterbalance to some of these teams that have these all-world quarterbacks like Mahomes and Watson.
I think it's a trend that really is starting to pick up because like you said, you just can't, there's not enough good quarterbacks that can just do what the top 5, 6, 7 guys can do. So I think the running back position has been so devalued over the last few years. It's like, oh my God, you take a running back in the first round. That's completely wrong. But I think it's going to get to a point when you have backs and you can build multiple backs in and you can build your line play where, okay, if the Chiefs want to go down and score in 5 or 6 plays and do it in a hurry up style, and we can go out and just pound their defense on 7, 8, 9-minute drives and wear them out by the second half. If our defense can get a stop or two, their defense is going to be so out of it that we're going to be able to have an advantage, control the clock, keep them off the field. And that's our path to victory. And I just think we're going to start seeing that more and more where teams are going to try to start blending their offense where it's like, okay, we don't have to go out and throw the ball 40 or 45 times just because we're playing the Chiefs. If we don't let them get us down double digits or by 2, 3 possessions in the first quarter, if we can just hang in there and wear their defense out, there's a chance because every one of these teams that have one of those quarterbacks is going to have to pay them such a large amount. They're going to have to give up something. If you're going to put all these wide receivers and weapons around them, normally it's the defense that's going to get shortchanged. You're going to be drafting young guys, playing undrafted guys. You're not going to have a lot of depth there. And when you get into the middle part of the season, Eric, I think that's when some of these issues start to show. So, Eric, that'll wrap us for segment 1. When we come back in segment 2, we'll pick it up with the Chiefs. Is this an issue that's going to last for this team? Is this just a tough spot in their schedule? We'll discuss that. The Patriots are 6-0, but Eric, I don't feel like they looked great on Thursday night. Is this the normal Patriots September, October, early season woes, or is there something we should watch there? We'll throw it into the no huddle, talk about a few more big NFL stories, and then we'll talk about the LeBron James China situation. Boy, that took a turn for LeBron. I don't think he expected, and the cleanup didn't work as well. So Eric and I will discuss that before we hit to overtime and talk a little NASCAR. All right, let's pick it up and talk a little bit about this Kansas City Chiefs team. They've dropped 2 in a row, both at home, which seemed like something that could never happen. Not the way that the media loves Patrick Mahomes. And look, he's earned it for what he did last year. But Eric, this team's got a lot of issues. They've got injuries on the offensive side, and they have a defense that can't stop anybody right now. So this Chiefs team, they've run into the Colts. They've run into the Texans, 2 of the better teams in the AFC. So is this just a tough spot in their schedule, or is this defense so bad that you feel like this is going to be a lingering problem for them?
It's a little bit of both, but once again, we talked about weeks ago that this Kansas City Chiefs team just feels like a team that if they don't score 30 or more points, they can't win the game because of how inept their defense is. And we look at the last 2 weeks, I think the Texans, obviously in the AFC South, the Texans and the Colts are just better than we thought they were, or at least the Colts are better than I thought they'd be. The Texans, we felt like were probably the cream of the crop of that division either way. But those are the 2 teams they played in the past 2 weeks. They lost both of those games and couldn't score points. Now they go up against a Denver defense that's top 4 in the league in terms of yards allowed. So Mahomes isn't going to have any easier of a time. Then they've got Green Bay and Minnesota after that. Justin, I think they're in a tough spot in their schedule, like you said, but I also feel it's back to that old grind of what we discussing and what we were concerned about. Everyone wants to anoint them the challengers of the Patriots. Well, guess what? The Patriots have the best defense in the NFL. And if the recipe for success is that the Chiefs have to score 30 or more, they're absolutely screwed this year.
Yeah, I think for the Chiefs standpoint, Eric, this is something to watch for because we've seen that with Jones being out, they just don't have a lot of depth. They're asking Frank Clark to do basically everything up front for them. And then their secondary, not very good either. So definitely something to keep an eye on with this Chiefs team, how their injuries stack up and what this team looks like towards the end of the year. Because remember, last year they got the AFC Championship game at home and they still couldn't close the deal on New England. Now, New England sits at 6-0, Eric. Everybody is singing their praises, but this is a team that has not been challenged. They have had a very, very easy schedule up until this point. Thursday night looked like a game they should just walk all over the Giants. The Giants were without basically every player on their team that had ever done anything on the offensive side of the ball outside of Golden Tate, and he had a big game for this Giants team. It took a punt off the back of someone's head to really turn it around for the Patriots. Tom Brady at times looked like he was 62, not 42. So we've seen this Patriots team, especially early in seasons, struggle, drop games. It feels like this year they haven't had that slip because their competition has been so bad. But once they start to play some better teams, Eric, do you have concerns about this Patriots team, or are you just buying into the fact that their defense is really good despite who they've played?
Is their defense as good as the statistics say? Because you're right. They certainly have played a few cupcakes in the first 6 games. Now, Buffalo, probably the most difficult defense that they've played. It was a tough game, 16-10.
Yeah, and Buffalo lost Josh Allen in that game,
I think
too.
That's the marker for us. I think they're going to play a Jets team this week that's highly motivated to give them hell. I mean, Darnold's back, and we're going to see really on that Monday night game what they're all about. After that, they got to play a Cleveland team that's panicking right now, and we'll talk about the Browns another time. And then they've got to play a Baltimore team, and then they really get into the meat of their schedule. The Eagles, the Cowboys, the Texans, the Chiefs. Justin, we're going to find out if this team is for real or not. All this talk about 16-0. No, I don't think so. I don't think this team goes 16-0, but are they going to run away with the AFC East again? Yeah, I think they are. And are they going to be easily 13-3 or 14-2? Yeah, I think they will be, but I think they are going to be challenged a lot more in the weeks ahead.
I actually think that they could be on upset alert this week.
I like that.
To your Jets. It just feels like there's something missing with that team on the offensive side of the ball. And if the Jets can come up with a game plan, look, Greg Williams is not going to be shy. So now you've got Darnold back. You've got a home game. You've got the Monday night crowd. Greg Williams is going to turn him loose on Brady. He's going to look to knock him down early, get him jumpy in the pocket. You don't know what Josh Gordon's status is going to be. The Patriots' run game has been terrible. So you start to kind of put all those things together. And if the Jets can just hang in there, I just don't think this Patriots defense has been challenged by anyone yet. And if you get Le'Veon Bell going and you've seen the fact that Darnold out there, Robbie Anderson is a complete different wide receiver. Same with Jamison Crowder. I just think that there is a chance, like definitely 10 points is way too much for this game, the way that the Patriots have played. This is not the same Jets team that they played in New England earlier this season. So I just think that if you're looking for upset alerts, that's one that's on my radar at this point, is watching out for that one on Monday night. So Eric, let's throw it to the no huddle. Let's knock out a couple of these stories quickly. The LA Chargers, maybe LA wants to send them back to San Diego at this point because no one comes out to watch them. They are playing terrible football. Had another dreadful performance versus a guy named Duck. What the hell is his name, Duck? I thought his name was Declan Hodges, but they kept calling him Duck. They still found their way to fall down 24-0 before, once again, Phillip Rivers had to scramble all over the field the second half trying to bring them back in that game. But Eric, another home game for this Chargers team that was basically a home game for the Steelers. This has been really the mantra for this Chargers team ever since they made this move to LA and are playing in this soccer stadium that no one comes out to watch them except for the visiting fans. So has this lack of home field advantage finally caught up to this Chargers team?
That's an excuse. I mean, do they have any home field advantage? No, absolutely not. But neither do the Rams. We've talked about that in past episodes. It's crazy to me. And I think it's just the fact that LA is just not a football town. That's the only thing I can come up with, because now they're building this huge stadium that two teams are supposed to share. And anytime there's a televised home game, I swear it's just like the other team is the home team. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah.
There's more cheering for the other team. And in this case, the Steelers were getting all of the fanfare at an away game that's all the way across the country. From Pennsylvania to California is thousands of miles. I think that this is no more than an excuse, because this team is absolutely underperforming where they should be. Great wide receivers. I know they've had some running back issues with Gordon being out, but Eckler did a fantastic job holding that spot. Now they've got Gordon, they've got Rivers, they've got Hunter Henry back. And how do you go and lay 24-0 into the second half? Completely unacceptable. And you can't blame your fans or their lack of fans for that if you're the Chargers. Thankfully, they get a team this week in Tennessee that has no idea if it's going to be Mariota or Tannehill or whatever. Actually, they've said it's going to be Tannehill, but can you believe that? So I think that's the Chargers' saving grace at this point. But then after that, it doesn't get any easier. I don't have to name the teams. You'll see them in the win column when they play the Chargers. I think this is another busted year for the Chargers. And when you look at their offense and how high we and others were on them prior to the season starting, it's a bit bizarre. But every good team that they've played this year, Detroit, the Texans, the Broncos, and the Steelers, which I know I'm stretching there with the Steelers, and I think the Broncos are better than their record, but the Steelers should have been better than their record. And my point remains, Detroit, Texans, Denver, and Pittsburgh, the Chargers lost to all of those named teams because they simply can't keep up with teams that want it more than they do. They're in a bad spot in LA with these Chargers.
I think there actually is something to it, just from the standpoint of most of these teams. You think, okay, we have 8 games where we're going to be at home. We should have some kind of an advantage. And the Chargers are having to use a silent count in their home stadium because there's so many Steeler fans. And I think their lack of talent, certainly their lack of offensive line play, the way the defense is struggling with Derwin James out, the fact that they just aren't as talented of a unit. And then you start to factor in that they have zero advantage when it comes to those 8 games at home. I think that is playing into this some. Look, it's definitely an excuse, but I think there is something behind it because I don't think they're as talented as they were in previous seasons to be able to overcome it. And this team has always had the injury bug for the last 5 or 6 years, but you start to factor in the injury bug plus the fact that 8 of their games a year where they should have some form of an advantage. I mean, it wouldn't be an advantage if Vegas gives you 2.5 to 3 points for playing at home. There's got to be some kind of advantage. And I'd love to talk to someone from Vegas that sets these books. That does that even factor in now for the Chargers games? I can't see that it does because the fans don't make any noise for them. The Steeler fans were 10 times louder than anything you heard for the Chargers. It's got to affect them. Keenan Allen started to talk about the fact of the fandom, how there is just the lack of it. Other players have brought it up, how when you come out there and you see all these visiting fans, what it does to them mentally. So I think it is affecting them. And Eric, I just don't think they have the talent right now.
And overall, it's just disgusting.
I'm
sorry, but it's just disgusting. You are a city that has an NFL team, whether you're Rams, whether you're Chargers. And I know the Chargers, are basically transplants from San Diego, but the Chargers, there's rumors of them already starting to look at St. Louis or finding a way